We are the champions. We are the champions. I have zero singing voice, but the Ohio State Buckeyes are once again the reigning national champions. No better way to end a Michigan title reign than with the Buckeyes being crowned once again as your national champions. Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing? Another week, another episode. This is Stats Over Politics. As always, I'm your host, Shaun Holko, alongside my guys, Mr. Jaevon Toddy, Mr. Kaz Johnson of Kazzy Bear TV. And guys, I am thrilled as an Ohio State Buckeyes fan after the Buckeyes just defeated Notre Dame 34-23 to win the national championship. Their first since 2014, when I was honored to watch that national championship alongside my grandpa, who went to Ohio State, the entire reason why I'm an Ohio State fan. And so I am very overjoyed right now as the Buckeyes, 51 days after losing to Michigan on their home field, the Buckeyes are crowned as national champions. And I am very, very excited. I know that our co host, Kevin Dent, is also very excited. He will be joining us very soon as he is currently taking his sister to the airport. And so he's being a great brother, and he will be joining us as soon as he possibly can. But Jaevon Toddy, as our USC and UNC fan on the podcast, just how do you feel about the Buckeyes being crowned as national champions once again?
From a financial perspective, I'm ecstatic. I want to shout out Jeremiah Smith. He respects coin. It looks like they were down. The spread was down and out at one point in time. The game itself, I mean, it was kind of a shit show for, I'd say, about 3.5 quarters. Maybe even 2.5. They came out firing on all cylinders. Notre Dame. They basically stuck to what their plan, what they thought would help them win the game, and that's basically running the ball with Riley Leonard, QB power. Couldn't really push the ball down the field that much. Shout out to I think it's a Greenhouse or Great House, the receiver for Notre Dame, that started to go off towards the end of the game. But basically, kind of caught Ohio State on their heels early on, and that was probably their best bet of having a chance to win. But once Ohio State got the ball and they scored, got a stop, went down and scored again, I was like, oh, okay, this is what it's going to look like. And Notre Dame isn't really built to come from behind because Riley Leonard can't really push the ball downfield. And they basically neutralized their game. Ohio State neutralized Notre Dame's game plan, and that's basically getting the ball to Riley Leonard and with QB power and, running the shit out of Jeremiah Love. But pretty much they took Jeremiah Love out of the game because they were down 14-7, I think, or it was 21-7 going into halftime. So they were playing catch-up ball basically the entire game. I think Ohio State's just team was just pretty much overpowered throughout the entire playoffs. It kind of showed. You saw Jeremiah Smith going off. Emeka Ibuka was going off the remainder of the playoffs. We saw guys like forget your guys' third receiver's name. Blanking on his name. Number 17. But it'll come back to me.
Wasn't it like Turn or something like that?
No,
I can't even tell you.
Quinshon Judkins, you guys got him in the transfer portal from Ole Miss, and Travion Henderson, who came back another year to win the championship. And then you got guys like Jack Sawyer on defense. You got Caleb Downs in the transfer portal. You can definitely thank Nick Saban for him. But I mean, there's a bunch of these guys that came back, especially on defense, that came back to Denzel Burke.
Jack Sawyer.
Yeah, Jack Sawyer. Guys like that came back to win a national championship. And it paid off. Obviously, a bunch of people were kind of writing this team off a little bit. I was one of those guys after the Michigan loss. It's just such an emotional game. rivalry game. People are like, they were a 21-point favorite. Like, how the hell are you losing to a team who can't throw the ball? Yada, yada, yada. They used all of that going into the playoff and absolutely obliterated Tennessee. And people were like, oh, wait, hold on. Ohio State, they might be up to something. They're like, well, wait until they play Oregon, number one team in the country, number one team in the playoff. Played Oregon, beat the shit out of Oregon in California. I'm like, okay, this is real. And then, going up against Texas, I'm like, they're probably going to beat Texas too, because Texas is a little bit wishy-washy. They were probably you could argue Texas was like the second, like roster wise, they were probably the second best team, and they beat Texas by 2 touchdowns. So, all in all, you got to give your hats off to Ryan Day, national champion. They perhaps laid the blueprint out of what the NIL era 12-team playoff will look like, on how to build your roster, what it's going to take, the amount of money that's going to possibly take to build a roster like this. $20 million was the magic number. You saw maybe Michigan might have let the blueprint out a little bit. They were going off of D-line. Their defense was so good, and their run game was heavily coveted. And I think Ohio State kind of copied that, because they literally got Quinshon Judkins like 25 minutes after Michigan won the national championship. And I was like, bro, it just started. But he was a big part of them getting to this point. And I also saw an old video resurfaced right before we got on the pod, and it showed Ryan Day's reaction to when they signed Jeremiah Smith on National Signing Day. He was like, is it confirmed? Because like he was trying to make sure, and he like pretended to faint. It was pretty insane. Also saw an old video of Jeremiah Smith. I think I mentioned this on the podcast a couple weeks ago. He was wearing a Florida State beanie, and they were talking about him, what's it like being committed? What's it going to be like going to Florida State? And how are you, are you excited? Blah, blah. He's like, yeah, we'll see what happens. National Signing Day is coming up in about 2 weeks, but he's like, I'm committed to Florida State right now. And I was like, that's not good. That's like it. So I mean, I also got to give credit to Will Howard. He was a guy that a lot of people questioned going into this playoff, his play, what it will look like. He's basically the reason on if they can go to a national championship and win or lose in the first round. I feel like he was playing lights out from the get-go. And I mean, it's just crazy to see that, there have probably been more talented teams than this. Honestly, the CJ Stroud year was probably it. You could argue that team.
Shout out to the shitty kicker for that.
You could argue that team was probably more talented than this team that they had right now. I think their quarterback play was obviously better. Receivers were, I'd say, receivers from like not just from one guy, because Jeremiah Smith was obviously that dude. But I feel like as a whole, their receiving core was probably better. They had good running backs. I mean, that was probably really, really close. But I think the 2014 team was stacked as well. This was just, domination for the most part. The entire playoff. Like, they were beating teams by an average of 2 touchdowns. Like, that's insane. Obviously, they won by 11 points tonight, but they won every game by double digits. So people are going to start that greatest team ever thing's going to start to come out. And I'm going to push back a little bit on greatest team ever assembled. I don't know about that. But I do think they dominated all of their opponents. So I'm not going to say that they're the best team ever, because I think LSU, USC, the Vince Young Texas team, one of those Miami teams back in the day when they were just beating the shit out of literally everybody, have something to say about that. But I feel like they could be put in the conversation based off of their margin of victory in every single game in the playoffs. So hats off to Ohio State. I don't really have any ill will towards them. They won me money, so I appreciate them for that. But other than that, man, it's kind of like now it's the way too early. Who's gonna win the championship next year? You guys are already favored to win it all again next year. I like Jeremiah Smith is coming back. I like your guys' quarterback. I like Julian Sand. A lot of people aren't going to be talking about him right now because obviously you guys won a championship, but he's going to be your guys' quarterback for years to come, and I think he's going to be really good. He was committed to Alabama, obviously hit the portal as soon as Saban retired, but he's going to be a guy for you guys. You'll hear a lot of Sand to Smith in the upcoming years, but yeah, hats off to Ohio State.
Yeah, you talk about a lot of the greatest college football teams, at least in recent memory, within the 21st century. And they just showed a graphic on SportsCenter that the 2019 LSU team, which went on to win a national championship, they had 4 top 5 wins in a season. The Buckeyes now have 5. And a lot of that has to do with the expanded college football playoff. Still, Buckeyes sit on top. And they are on top of the college football world, and I am definitely overjoyed about it. Kaz, I know that college football isn't necessarily your bag, but do you have any reaction to the Buckeyes winning the national championship?
Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch the game. I was training clients all afternoon, like all the way through the game and everything. So by the time I got home, it was already like pretty much over. I just saw at one point there was a big gap. And then all of a sudden it closed and they came back and I got a little alert from DraftKings saying right now they're who was it? Notre Dame was
Notre
8.
Dame?
Yeah, it was 8 points and the odds were like plus 8,000. And I'm like, oh, DraftKings trying to get my money. Why not put So I put $5 on. I was like, ah, screw it. Whatever. But yeah, no, I did want to watch the game. I did, but unfortunately, just too much work tonight. So had to just kind of check the final score pretty much by the time I got to my car and got home. It's freezing cold here right now. So I wasn't like on my phone like on the drive back home. I was like shivering just get to the crib, bro. So yeah, I didn't get to catch it, but I did tell some friends of mine to ask me like who I was going for. I did say I was going for Ohio State. I find myself cheering for Ohio State sometimes, like just kind of randomly. It dates back to I think I was a freshman in college, or maybe I was a senior in high school. I can't remember, but there was a guy from Chicago. I cannot remember his name, but he was really good at basketball. He's a short guy, and I actually got to see him play in high school. And I really liked him, and he ended up going to Ohio State. I think it was full ride. I think it was DJ something. It's way back. I'm talking like 09, 2000, somewhere around there. It didn't pan out, but he was really good. I believe he even started like almost right away as a true freshman. So ever since then, I was like, you know what? Sometimes just if the wind's blowing right, I'll just catch an Ohio State game and cheer for Ohio State. But I live in Iowa, so most of my loyalty remains with Iowa. But yeah, didn't get to catch a snap, unfortunately.
Well, I'm
your
glad
guys'
that
average margin of victory was 18 points. That's a lot.
I love it. I absolutely love to see it. And even though you didn't get to watch a Snapcast, I'm glad that you were rooting for the Buckeyes. And you really just put things into perspective for me, too, on how cold it is in Iowa right now. Because I moved to Sonora, California from Sacramento. It's 2 hours out of Sacramento, but I live in the California foothills now. And it gets like 10 to 15 degrees colder here. And I'm like complaining about being in 35, 40 degree weather. Meanwhile, you're just hoping that it's over 0. And so that really puts things in perspective for me.
Another guy too that actually there's 2 DJs. So there's a DJ Carton that you probably remember if you watch basketball at Ohio State. But if not, DJ Carton, he's actually from where the city that I do my coaching at. Not from the same school, the high school, a different high school, like a rival school, but he played for the Buckeyes from 2019 to 2020. Good basketball player, but yeah, I'm trying to think of his name. It'll come to me, but yeah, it stemmed way back, man. I wish I could remember, man. Oh my god, but yeah, I'm bummed. I did want to watch it. One of my trainees I was training this guy. He's like, man, you gonna catch the game? I'm like, I'm gonna try to if I can get out here in time. And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah, I guess he's a big college football guy. He's like, yeah, man, we got already some food cooking and everything right now. I'm just trying to get this workout in and head back home. So I'm like, we'll see. But no, I definitely told my friends when they asked, I was going for the Buckeyes.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And we will get into the game itself a lot more later on, but we're going to wait for Kevin's arrival to do so as my fellow Buckeyes fan. And so, guys, let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into it here on episode number 132. And let's get into our NFL Divisional Round recap. And we'll start things off. We'll go in order in which the games took place. And Kansas City is moving on once again to another AFC Championship game. I think that's 7 in a row now for the Chiefs as they defeated the Houston Texans 23-14. But, Toddy, another game played by Kansas City that was marred by the officials. Regardless, Kansas City is moving on. They win 23-14. That final score, significant to some because of what KC's punter did at the end. And obviously for overall strategy for the Chiefs, it was to run out the clock. But Toddy's smirk indicates there were plenty of people who picked the spread in this game who definitely were happy with that play. But overall, Toddy, the Chiefs are moving on to another AFC Championship game as they beat the Texans 23-14. What did you think of this one overall?
I had the Texans plus 9.5 in this game, so obviously I was stoked by that. I was floored when I turned the game off after they missed the field goal, which was a chip shot, got blocked. So I turned the game off in disbelief, agony, anger, whatever emotion you want to describe. And then just to figure out that the kicker ends up running out of bounds, and I was like, there's no way. I couldn't believe it. As far as the game goes, I think I saw a stat that said that the Texans outgained the Chiefs by like 100 yards, and they lost. I think that they're the first team in playoff history for that ever to happen. I think the Texans they had good drives that were killed by penalties, holding calls. I think they had a couple of legal procedures. That were drive killers for them. CJ Stroud was using his legs. A lot of people kind of forget that he can actually run. He's more of a true pocket passer that can actually use his legs and run. And you saw that a little bit at Ohio State, especially in that Georgia game back then. And people were like, what? CJ Stroud can run? And then, he's displaying it a little bit in the playoffs here in the NFL. So, obviously, CJ Stroud's fighting with one hand behind his back. Doesn't have Stephon Diggs, doesn't have Tank Dell. You're going into Kansas City, one of the toughest places to play, especially in the playoffs. And you got to go out there and try and get a victory. I thought the Texans defense played pretty well. Forcing field goals, wasn't really allowing too many touchdowns. The Texans offense couldn't really get it going. I thought Mahomes did what Mahomes does. I mean, the touchdown passes to Kelsey, it's just, what can you do? That's just what he does. I thought that the refs definitely did help them in a bunch of places. On third down, it was like third and long, and they called roughing the passer on Will Anderson Jr. And when you watch the replay, it's kind of like, what are we looking at? You even heard in post-game press conferences from Joe Mixon, from even D'Amico Ryans, they were like, it's us against everybody. When you're going to Kansas City, you know what it's going to be like. You're playing two different teams. You're playing the Chiefs and you're playing the refs. I mean, I'm not going to say the refs didn't help them, but I do think the Texans had opportunities to score touchdowns and they weren't able to do so. So, I think the Texans overachieved, honestly, especially when they lost Tank Dell and when they lost Stephon Diggs. For them to get a playoff win a week ago was kind of, astonishing to most of the world. And for them to kind of, be within a score against the defending champs, you're like, okay, CJ, we know you didn't have the greatest year. Some people will call it a sophomore slump, but he ended up winning in the playoffs. And if this is CJ Stroud's floor, this is a lot to really look forward to. I mean, if the floor is a playoff win and you get a chance at the divisional round, you'll take that any day of the week. So I knew that I'm pretty sure all of us picked the Chiefs to win. But the margin of victory got a little bit close at the end, obviously. So that's why I thought the spread was way too high. Like 8 was a lot. And the Chiefs weren't really good at covering those spreads 6 or more. Saw a stat that they were like 0-7 or something when their spread was like above a touchdown, basically. So they're moving on again to what some people call the Chiefs Invitational, and that is the AFC Championship game. So hats off to D'Amico Ryans, former Niners defensive coordinator, on a good year. And the Chiefs are moving on once again.
Yeah, the AFC Championship, formerly known as the Patriots Invitational, now rebranded to the Chiefs Invitational. And Toddy, just to follow up on the point that you made about Joe Mixon and members of the Texans talking about how anytime you play the Chiefs, you're also playing the Zebras as well in the referees. It's almost like we've been saying that as 49ers fans for 5 years, since 2020 in that Super Bowl that was. And back then, we were called crybabies and sore losers and this and that. When there's that photo, it's an iconic photo at this point of Nick Bosa being held. And now that it has continued for 5 years, it's like, oh, I guess we might have been justified in saying that. And I'm sure Kaz might have his gripes with the Chiefs as well from his Super Bowl. But Kaz, just focusing on this game that was between the Chiefs and the Texans, just what were your thoughts on the game itself?
Like you said, we all picked the Chiefs to win. Mahomes lives in the AFC Championship. I don't think he's missed a single one since he's been a starter. And of course, they're looking to do that three-peat. The Texans are too hurt right now. They're in Arrowhead. It's cold. I think there's a little bit of snow too as well. Not mistaken. If there wasn't a little bit of snow, it probably was later on that night because the whole Midwest kind of got hit with some strange little weather clouds. But yeah, the only thing I really noticed that really bugged me was just they didn't really try to change things up with the Texans offense. You don't have Tank Dell, you don't have Stephon Diggs. You gotta try new things. And it just seemed like it was nope, let's just do the same thing over and over again and hope that something works. And the only thing that started to work was when Stroud started to be a little mobile, it was like, okay, there's a little something, but then it's just like a dead drive. Like there's just nothing. I mean, he was running for his life. Didn't have guys that can make plays downfield, unfortunately. And at the end of the day, you're not going to win a game when you get sacked 8 times. That's a big one. Chiefs defense stepped up really good. I don't think people are talking about that enough. I think the Chiefs defense, obviously played very, very well. They've been playing well all season long, but they played very, very well in a very important game. So, per usual, the Chiefs just get away with a win that, yeah, they are the better team. They're better all around. And they've been winning like this all season long. They've been just kind of grinding it out, and then a little bit of help from referees, and that's what everybody's kind of hyper focusing on. And it's like, put them away, then score 3 back to back to back. Have the game start off 14-0. It was like 10-13 for a little while or something like that. It was like a weird score for a little while. And then all of a sudden, just in the second half comes around, and they start to do things. Kel starts going off. He had a really good game, but yeah, just not enough. Even it just seemed like the overall demeanor of that Texans team was just like, yeah, we know we're not gonna leave the stadium with a W. So it's unfortunate, man. It sucks. They're probably not gonna have Stephon Diggs next year. That sucks. It would be nice. Tank Dell might not ever be the same again. This might be the beginning of the end of the Texans with CJ Stroud at quarterback. I'm not sure. Oh yeah, think about it.
Just got there.
Yeah, no, think about it. So he's on a rookie contract, right? Okay, if you got guys like Tank Dell, who's also on the second year, no Stephon Diggs. They built this team up to make a run, and they're getting there because their division's weak. They're not getting there because they're doing anything spectacular. They're not a good football team right now, and I will blame the injuries. They're not a good football team right now. I I love D'Amico Ryans. I mean, he's a former Eagle. Head coach. I really do. I thought he should have got defensive coach of the year or defensive coach, coach of the year, but he didn't, and it is what it is. Now he had a perfect opportunity to make something happen in Kansas City, and it just seemed like there was just nothing. There's just nothing. Kansas City didn't have to do much to win that game. Their defense stepped up, and that was it. So, like I said, it could be the beginning of the end, not for C.J. Stroud as a player, but he might not even be a Texan. Who knows if he even gets – if they're trying to get guys there and they're gone. Like I said, Tank Dell literally – with his injury, he might not be the same ever again. So that means you got just Nico Collins there. So that means draft – you're going to just draft some new guys, I guess, make some trades. It's a possibility. But for right now, I mean, they went out and got Joe Mixon. He's at the end of his prime for sure. Like,
yeah,
what are we doing? What's the future for the Texans? If you think about it. So when I say the beginning of the end, no, I don't think C.J. Stroud's going to suck forever. No, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying they might not be a good team. And if you look at that division, the Colts are maybe a step or two away from being a contender. I mean, they were kind of – they've been fighting. They were right there up until the very end for the most part. They wouldn't have made the playoffs, but they did have an opportunity for a little while. They just did what they did in the previous year and shot themselves in the foot. And Anthony Richardson just sucks right now. They went through Anthony Richardson, back to Joe Flacco, back to Anthony Richardson. It's just like, what are we doing here? They don't know what the hell they're doing. So be on the lookout for teams like the Colts. I don't want to say the Jaguars because as long as Trevor Lawrence is there, they're not going to win anything. But I mean, they got a guy there, Brian Thomas. Like he, say he turns out to be a force to be reckoned with in a division, and they start winning a few games down there. So I mean, there's some decent like rosters in the NFC South or in the AFC South that could make a surge forward. And the Texans right now look like they're not there. Like it looks like they made an attempt. And this was the attempt. I mean, what more do you need to do? You went out and got Diggs. Tank Dell became a guy. Nico Collins was the best receiver in the league until he got hurt. So it's like, what's next? So I don't know. It's kind of sad. I'm going to continue to cheer for C.J. Stroud, but I don't believe that this Texans team is going to be a force. I think this was their time. So unless Tank Dell comes back and he's the same Tank Dell after completely blowing his knee up in a way that's, I mean, I looked up the reports. Like, it's not a regular break. Like, he just kind of tore it. No, everything's completely blown up in his knee. Like, bone shifted completely away from the knee. Okay, we'll see. As a former athlete, I'm telling you, some of these injuries are unfortunately career-ending. He may not be done forever, but he may not be the same ever again. So it just depends on what they do. This offseason is going to be all telling.
Yeah, and Toddy, as harsh as that may sound, when you're looking at things realistically as Kaz is, as far as the Texans being Super Bowl contenders, their window might have been real short and it may have been negated by injuries. CJ Stroud is a piece that you can build around for the next 15 years, but that doesn't mean that everything around him is going to be the same. And talking about Joe Mixon is 29. And so he is right at the end of his prime. So much so that I traded him away from my dynasty team this year because I'm like, all right, he's almost 30. Running backs have zero value once they hit 30, unless your name's Derrick Henry. And so for the Texans as presently constructed, this might have been their window. I mean, you keep CJ, Nico Collins, Will Anderson long-term, and obviously our favorite player, Mr. Stingley. But other than those guys with D'Amico Ryans, it's like this might have been their window. And so as harsh as it may sound, I think Kaz is being realistic and he's correct. And it's tough being.
I think you guys are kind of screaming at clouds a little bit. This is CJ Stroud's second year in the league. You guys Kaz literally mentioned the dysfunction of the AFC South with the Jaguars. I don't even think he mentioned the Titans because the Titans are so god awful. Like it's like, okay. And then you got the Colts, and the Colts don't know what their quarterback situation is. So CJ's probably going to run this division for years to come. You have a young stud coach in D'Amico Ryans, who's also in his second year coaching, going into his third year. This is something that you just have to retool. I mean, you still can build around CJ Stroud. I get that you'll have to pay him in a couple of years, but that's for he still has 2 years left on his rookie deal. So I I'm not here to jump off of the CJ Stroud train and say, "Oh, the window's closed." It's the second year in the league. We're jumping off the bandwagon already. Like it's second year. He's been in the playoffs twice in the first 2 years of his career, and he's won playoff games in both of the years. So I get it. You guys are saying, Tank Dell, this, that, and the third.
As presently constructed, like the core that they have manufactured is not going to be the core that wins the
jump
Super
off
Bowl.
this bandwagon already. Like you got a young star quarterback in CJ Stroud who you can build around and definitely retool this roster. Yes, you lost Tank Dell, and yes, you lost Stephon Diggs, 2 guys that you were hoping to count on late in the playoffs. And who knows, if these guys were playing in this game, things could have been a whole lot different. But the window is closed. I can't get on that bus with you guys. I can't get on that train. The window is definitely not closed because there's just so much to look forward to for this team. I get they had a bunch of injuries, but you still have CJ Stroud. And I feel like that's literally the most important piece that you need to winning a Super Bowl. And that's a star young quarterback.
Yeah, and you're very correct about that, and that's why the Texans will have that piece to build around for the next 15 years. But I think the point that Kaz and I are trying to make is like, are you going to win a Super Bowl with Stephon Diggs as one of your top 2 receivers? No. Are you going to win a Super Bowl with Joe Mixon as your starting running back? Probably not. So it's the Texans as presently constructed. The window was very short, but injuries kind of got.
I want to re-say this real quick. I'm just going to say it real quick before you move on. So you're right, Toddy. I sounded a little crazy. But I'll re-say it. I feel like they made a significant surge to try to go and win the Super Bowl right now, and that it's gone. Like it's gone, and I don't think it's going to be something they're going to get back next year or the next year after that. I don't, unless again they draft or they make who knows? I mean, maybe they find a stud that can help out that offense. Maybe they go running back. I mean, I don't know what they need over there in Houston, what their primary need is, but for now, like you made a good point, running the division, and then what? We've seen you're in the AFC, like teams are only getting better, and you always have Mahomes there. You got Lamar there, you got Josh Allen there. You're not going to do anything in the playoffs, probably, most likely.
You do have to look at the fact that people do want to go to Houston. There's no state tax. Obviously, you have CJ Stroud. Guys are going to want to go play in Houston. I feel like that's a plus for them in free agency and just going forward. A lot of people don't want to go to certain places that have, obviously you could have like, go to Kansas City. It's Patrick Mahomes. But do you want to live in Kansas City? I feel like that's something to definitely look at. I'm not saying that people wouldn't want to go play with Patrick Mahomes, obviously, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff that goes into where you're situated, like your division, obviously, where things stack, how good is your team, all of that plays a factor into it. So that's just another plus I would say for why.
We'll see. I mean, I could be jumping the gun early, but I just thought this was like a power move, and that this was supposed to be something significant, and unfortunately, it's gone like that. That's all. So we'll see. Maybe they find somebody next year or the next 2 years, and they're even in a better situation. That's possible.
I'm kind of on what you're on for, but just a different team that ended up losing this weekend.
And that's a tease. That's a tease right there. As we keep things moving here on episode 132 of Stats Over Politics, Shaun Holko alongside Kaz Johnson and Jaevon Toddy. Kevin Denton should be joining us soon. Guys, now as we get to the shocker of the weekend, the only real upset of the weekend, and that being the Commanders, the Washington Commanders, going to Detroit and taking down the 1 seed Lions, my Super Bowl pick. Bracket busted as the Washington Commanders beat the Lions 45-31. The 15-win Lions get eliminated by rookie quarterback Jaden Daniels, Scary Terry, Ohio State alum Terry McLaurin, OHIO. As man, this was a shocker to me. Like, as I was trying to look at all these matchups and trying to think, okay, Bills, Ravens, you just got to put that aside. There's not an upset in that. You got 2 great teams duking it out. There would not be an upset from that. And so then when I looked at the other 3 matchups, I was just trying to think, okay, what's the upset going to be? Because there's going to be one. And I looked at this one, but I was just like, no, the Lions, they are on their home field. It's the divisional round. If they're going to get upset, it's going to be in the NFC Championship game. But the Commanders, they proved me wrong. Congrats to them. I was happy for a family member of mine who's a longtime Washington fan. One of my coworkers is a longtime Washington fan. So I was happy for them, but as equally surprised just by the domination in this game. And I'm getting ahead of myself here, but I was ultimately wrong because I picked the Rams as my upset of the weekend. Instead, it was the Commanders. So, Kaz, with this being your division and your upcoming opponent as an Eagles fan, I'm going to toss this back to you. What did you think about the Lions losing to the Commanders, 45-31?
I'll give a major shout out to the Commanders for playing the Lions type of football. That's what they did. They came out there and they scored fast. That's why defense is so important. We all know Detroit's defense has been hurt the entire season. They even lost some guys this game. I mean, there was a guy who got injured, like I think within the first half. One of their main defensive guys. I think it was a lineman. I can't remember exactly, but you need defense to win. You do, because all it takes is for you to be in a shootout with a team, and it's going to be like that Rams Chiefs game back in 2018 or whatever, where it was like 50 to a million to a million. And it's like, hey, it's just all to come down to who has the ball last. That's it. Ain't neither defense stopping these offenses. Commanders don't have a stud defense, but you know what? They showed up. They did their best. They put their best effort against a very, very good Lions offense. And the Lions offense still feasted. It ain't like they blew them out. They pulled away at the very end, but dude, I mean, Gibbs, he still had a game. Just like he has in week after week after week. You know, Jameson Williams, he had a insane screen and he housed it for 60 yards. And then McLaurin came back and did the same thing. You don't want to be in these shootouts, especially in a playoff game. That's why, I had the Eagles. If we made it to the NFC Championship game and they were going to be there, I would still have picked the Eagles to win, because I'm like, we have a number one defense in the league. All we need to do is just rattle them a little bit, and we need to score a few points. We got Saquon Barkley. It can be done. But what the Commanders did, they said, screw it. All season long, Jaden Daniels, Terry McLaurin, all them guys have been putting up a massive amount of points and yards all season. I don't know how many 30-plus point games they've had this season. They have a handful. And they just did it again in a playoff game. They came out and, they rattled the Lions early, and I think that the lights just got a little bit too bright for the Lions. Goff, I mean, he was getting rocked that game. There's one hit for sure. I'm like, damn, they're not playing. This is the final blow right here.
Teddy Bridgewater even made an appearance because of that. Amazing. He was just coaching his high school to a state championship, and here he is playing in a playoff game.
Yeah, man. It was just you just don't want to do that, man. In my head, as a diehard Eagles fan, I never want to see a final score, 44-43 in a playoff game. That would be such an emotional roller coaster. I'd much rather have more of a grinder of a game, not some 13-10 game, no, but I can definitely tell that we are either in control or we're not. A game like that, you can't tell whether, you don't know. It all comes down to just, okay, who's going to get the deep shot downfield? Who's going to get the big run? Gibbs getting his money. Terry McLaurin getting his money. Jameson Williams getting his money. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, Jaden Daniels doing what he does. It was a shocker. We all know it was a shocker. It was definitely unexpected. Vegas definitely cashed hard on all the people who put their life savings on the Lions, for sure.
You see that? Did you see that one video on social media where it was the guy who was down bad? He literally was in the stadium and he was like this, and his girlfriend or significant other is just going after him, and then she leaves him there, and the caption just said, "When you lose all your rent money on the line."
Yeah, you already know. And you know what? We joke about it, but these things really happen. These things really happen. People put their lives on line for these bets. It happens all the time. So you think about this game being a for sure game. I mean, the Lions were favored to win the Super Bowl behind the Chiefs. Chiefs, Lions, and then I think it was Ravens, and then I think it was Bills, and then Philadelphia or something like that. We were fifth or something on everybody's list. I think it was NFL Fox or something like that. I'm whatever, but the Lions were, I think they were plus 4 something, I believe. Don't quote me on that, as a Super Bowl favorite to win. But yeah, man, just again, shout out to Commanders. I mean, that shit won't work next week. But shout out to Commanders because that is how you beat Detroit. There's two ways you can beat a team like Detroit. One, you can just outscore them and go back and forth and just pray to God that you get the ball in the end more times than they do. Or two, your defense shows up and you make them change their entire game plan. We don't have to do what the Commanders did to. We wouldn't have had to done what the Commanders did to the Lions to win. We would have played a completely different game. But they played the Lions game and they got up. They got up quick. That's what happens. That's just basic football. You never want to be in that situation. Anybody who knows ball knows that is not ideal. You do not want to be in a high-scoring shootout. Because here's the thing. Your defense can't rest. So your defense already has holes, and they're getting tired. The Commanders' defense, tired. But at the end of the day, Commanders' defense, Lions' defense. One stop is all it took to widen that gap and put it away. So, like I said, they were getting to go off at the very end there. The Lions didn't have an answer for anything. They were pinning them back pretty far. Just shout out to Commanders. I can't even be mad at it. I'm not a Commander hater. I mean, their fans they turned remedial over the fucking course of 4 weeks, but I'm like that's. I texted you guys, how you feel? I'm like, I'm chilling. I'm like, I'm acting like I've been here. Yes. In the last 8 years, I have seen 2 Super Bowl appearances in multiple playoff games and even playoff wins. So I'm like, I'm not nervous about anything. I'm going to chill out and watch a good football game. Commanders fans are acting like they won the Super Bowl, as they should be happy. Don't get me wrong, be happy. But like, you guys talking crazy. Like, you know what I'm saying? You beat us because you played Kenny Pickett. And it wasn't like, well, he came in the fourth quarter, third. No, he played 3 quarters of football. And at the same time, it wasn't like you guys were just handling that game. No, it came down to the very, very end. And Jaden Daniels I think he had like a pair of touchdowns in the fourth quarter or something like that. And you guys won. We couldn't do anything on offense because you guys stacked the box and you guys locked down Saquon Barkley. There's nothing there for Kenny Pickett. Shit, there's nothing there even when Jalen Hurts is in the game half the time. That's why he throws for 120, 140 yards. And it just is what it is. We get the ball to Saquon. But not having Jalen Hurts in that game definitely changed that entire dynamic, and it's clear as day. I mean, let's just call it what it is. You got Jalen Hurts and you got Kenny Pickett. That's just is what it is. Whether you're a believer in Hurts, you like Hurts or not, he is double the quarterback Kenny Pickett is on any given Sunday. So again, shout out to Commanders. Enjoy it, but you're for sure getting bent over next week, without a doubt.
Well, Toddy, another development that we had happened today, being Monday, January 20th, with the Lions, is that they have now officially, we expected it to happen, but they have now officially lost their offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, who is now the new head coach of your Chicago Bears. I just wanted to say that, so it's documented here on the podcast. We're not ignoring it. It happened. We'll get to all the coaching moves on another episode because we got a lot to talk about today. But I just wanted to put that out there in this transition because it is your Chicago Bears. But when it comes to the game itself, the Detroit Lions, they got upset. And Ben Johnson, he came back for another year to go on a Super Bowl run, and it got cut abruptly short by the Commanders. And Toddy, you were very high on the Commanders coming into this year. You were the only one of us who said that they would make the playoffs. And so kudos to you for seeing this run. But just what was your reaction to the Commanders beating the Lions 45-31?
Hashtag Caleb back. The game itself, I think when the Lions came out and scored and they went up 7-0, I was like, oh, they're about to strike up the bands. Like, it's going to be one of those nights. But Jaden kind of responded early. And usually, I think the Commanders usually like to get the ball first, start out fast, and let the other team kind of play catch up. But I've just been on the wrong side of betting against Jaden Daniels for the majority of the season. Like, the games that I bet on him, I'm going to lose. The games I bet on him, I win. So maybe I'm doing something wrong. He has just surpassed all rookie expectations. I mean, I think Rookie of the Year is kind of already in his house somewhere, just mounted on the wall. I think just what he's been able to do with the lack of talent. Now, I think we can all agree that Terry McLaurin is a monster. Brian Robinson is a solid running back, but it's like their offense isn't like overpowering most defenses. I think it's Jaden Daniels literally making chicken salad out of chicken shit for the most part. He's been sensational. I'd say for the back half of the year for the most part. Kaz mentioned he was talking about Kenny Pickett and all, they played against, we only, they did turn the ball over several times in that game as well. I don't think that's the same guy. I think he gets better literally every single week. So if we're going off of old film, I mean, this was a team that went down to the wire with the Bears, and it took a miracle at the end to win. I don't even think that's the same quarterback. So I think he's literally just seeing a bunch of stuff that he hasn't seen in previous week, and he's just like downloading information literally every single week, and he's getting better and better. He's what I wanted Caleb to be. You talk about a top 15 quarterback. Jaden Daniels is a top 10 quarterback right now in the NFL. I don't think it should be really debated that much. I mean, if we're watching one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, Jaden Daniels is one of those type of guys. As far as the game goes, I thought the Commanders were able to force turnovers. I believe they forced 3, if I'm not mistaken, and one of those was a pick 6. I thought it was very pivotal to the Commanders winning this game. Jared Goff had to be better with taking care of the football. Obviously thought he got knocked out of the game on that interception where he kind of got bulldozed by, I forgot who it was that hit him, but Shaun already mentioned that we saw Teddy Bridgewater in this game, and they ran like a double reverse, and on that reverse, that was the 61-yard reverse play to Jameson Williams. And I thought that they were down 3 after that. But Commanders just came back, threw a bubble screen to Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin took it like 60 yards. So I get that their offense isn't really like overpowering, but they're able to score points. And I feel like you add that with a combination of Jaden Daniels is able to make plays with his legs and beat you downfield with his arm. I think they got a shot against the Eagles. I'm not saying I don't know if they're going to win, but I bet against the guy too many times, and I've seen crazier things happen. So the Commanders right now are playing with house money. They're a team that nobody expected to be here. They won 4 games last year. As Shaun mentioned earlier that I was one of the guys to pick them to go to the playoffs. I was like, Jaden Daniels is a guy that can literally turn around your franchise. You guys like, hey, I mean, they won 4 games last year. So how much more turning around can we do? We're seeing firsthand that he can do anything. I mean, they beat the number 1 seed on the road by 2 touchdowns. It's getting scary. So, I mean, they could go in next game and just be like, hey, we're in the NFC Championship. They were literally one of the worst teams in the NFL last year. They were picked 2nd. One of the worst teams in the NFL. Now they're in the NFC Championship game because of one guy. And he's a rookie. So, I mean, the Lions are going to lose both of their coordinators to head coaching jobs. You already lost. I mean, their defense was literally dropping like flies. We saw the Eagles lose both of their coordinators, and they started off 10-0, but then kind of just fell off of a cliff towards the end of the year, and people were calling for Sirianni's job. And Kaz was talking about how the Texans window is closing. This Lions window can close really, really fast. Goff could regress. You lost guys to injury on the defensive side of the ball. You're losing both of your coordinators. I mean, when you're just taking that's really big. When you lose not 1 but 2 coordinators, it's hard to come back from that. I mean, we see guys like McVay, obviously Kyle Shanahan. like lose guys to head coaching jobs almost every year, it seemed like, for at least the 49ers. But the Niners were still able to adapt and still somehow drag Jimmy Garoppolo to the NFC Championship game. I don't know how, but it happened. This with Dan Campbell probably going to, well, already lost Ben Johnson, going to, I assume, lose Aaron Glenn as well. You want to see what their offense, what their team is going to look like with both coordinators kind of evaporating into the abyss and them kind of having to regroup, retool their team. You kind of saw, Montgomery, who's fighting back from injury. The roster is still probably going to be really good, but you want to see, like, how can they, put this, what is their team going to look like moving forward without these coordinators? Who were head coaches? You had 3 head coaches on your team, and that's an advantage to a bunch of teams. So, are they going to venture out, or are they going to try and keep it in-house and be like, hey, we have this guy around our team already. Let's try to see and make things happen. We kind of saw that with the Raiders, and I love AP. I think he was probably given a raw deal because he didn't have a quarterback, but they try to promote him, and they're picking in the top 6, and he is now gone. So things can change really fast in the NFL, and I think the Lions are one of those teams to definitely look out for moving forward and what their team's going to look like. Are they going to? I don't know. I'm not saying they're going to miss the playoffs, but I mean, it could get ugly. Like you could get to the first round and get blown out in the first round of the playoffs, and possibly be on the road. So things change very quickly in the NFL.
Yeah, and it's crazy how the Lions could end up being one-hit wonders with this 15-win season. But like you said, things change very quickly in the NFL. And now the team that the Commanders will be playing, it's going to be an NFC East battle for the NFC Championship, much like we saw 4 years ago with an NFC West battle for the NFC Championship between the 49ers and the Rams. Now we have the Commanders versus the Eagles after the Eagles beat the Rams 28-22. And Kaz, we talked about this over text, but I figure I'll bring it to the pod just for everyone else to hear your explanation. But all week going into this game, it was, Matthew Stafford is 1-8 in snow games. This is going to benefit the Eagles. They're playing on their home turf. They know what it's like to play in the snow. Matthew Stafford played in a dome in Detroit for so many years, and then he goes to L.A., and that's technically an outdoor stadium, but it's in L.A., and he had hardly any experience, and the experience he did was very poor. 1 win in 9 games. And ultimately, something that you and Kevin were both saying is that the snow actually benefited the Rams as the Rams go on to win this game, the Rams go on to lose this game by 6 points. And so just what did you think overall about your Eagles advancing to another NFC Championship game? But if you could explain to the audience just how the snow actually benefited the team from California.
I mean, I had a couple friends in the game, so they were kind of telling me, some inside stuff. But snow, I mean, it's a variable, man. Like, it's not like the Eagles play in snow, 17, 18 weeks out of the season. You know what I'm saying? We don't play in snow either. So it's not – cold has nothing to do with it. And it was cold there. It was definitely cold, but that has nothing to do with it. It's not like they're Miami where it's like – Tua is notoriously bad for playing in the cold. Stafford has won games in the cold. Okay, he's been in the league for a million years. He's played cold games. I don't think that he's just absolutely terrible. Now, whether they win or not, that's a different thing. But are we going to sit there and say that without me even looking? Again, you guys can fact check me if you want. But without me even looking, I'm pretty sure if you were to pull up some of his coldest games he's played, he probably still has decent stats. I don't recall Stafford ever just having he's just terrible. He's putting up 120 yards, throwing 4 picks. No. It's not Stafford. It's never been Stafford his whole career. So the snow, it's just like the slippery field in Brazil and the slippery field in the Super Bowl. Both teams got to play on it. Okay? Both teams got to play on it. But when it comes to the game overall, like offensively, who's got the better offense? Is it the Rams or the Eagles? Well, you can kind of argue. Well, Stafford, he's a better quarterback, I would say, through the air for sure, than Jalen Hurts. He puts up a lot of yards per game. I mean, let's just call it what it is. He's got some studs there. Puka Nacua is no joke. He had a solid game. Cooper Kupp, veteran, won the Triple Crown just 2 years ago, 2-3 years ago. And then you have Kyron Williams in the backfield, which that's a good running back. Everybody knows in the snow it's usually a running game. You guys think that Kyron Williams was just going to not be good, only Saquon's going to be good. No, that just comes to show how much better guys like Saquon is in comparison to guys like Kyron Williams. Yes, I get it. We have an amazing offensive line. But again, Jared Verse, he had an amazing game. He had 2 sacks, 2 QB hits. He had I think 5 solo tackles. I mean, he had a baller-ass game. So it's not like guys on the Rams weren't playing well. There's guys Stafford had a good game. He had a solid game. Said he was throwing the ball everywhere because they were trying to compare him and Hurts stats, saying, look, Hurts sucks. Stafford doesn't have a problem with it. Stafford's in the snow. He lives in LA. They don't ever get no snow. But look, he has no problem throwing the ball. Okay, I get it. He's definitely a better passer than Hurts. I can say that openly and honestly and not really care. I think that Hurts has his moments, but at the end of the day, every quarterback has certain tangibles that make them who they are. It's not a big fucking deal. All right, it really isn't. So when it comes to the game, it was a game that when I was watching with my friends, I was like, this game should be 40-10. We're not capitalizing on these drives where Jake Elliott, saved us. I think he made 3 field goals, which was surprising. But it's you just see how the snow even affected Hurts. He's out there scrambling, and then he's just sliding down like he always does, and it pisses me off every time. But that's just what he does. It was just a sloppy game. You know what I mean? All around was a sloppy game. There's guys, defenders slipping and falling. There's film out there everywhere, all over Twitter, saying if Jalen Carter didn't get that final sack, to seal the game, there was a tight end that was wide open because one of our defenders fell, and we were up 6 points. That would have been a game winning score. We would have got the ball with I don't know, not a lot of time left, under a minute for sure. So everybody was everywhere, and that's what my friends were saying. I were texting me yo, there's guys slipping every play. You just can't see it on the television. It's different. You only see the hyper focused offensive line and where the ball's at. He's no, guys are slipping and falling everywhere. But you're in Philadelphia. That place is an extremely hard place. I don't know why people don't talk about that more. You hear about the 12th man. You hear about Arrowhead. You hear about all these. Do you guys understand how hard it is to play in Philadelphia? Jared Verse was getting snowballs thrown at him while he was leaving the stadium. He was getting talked to the entire time he was on the sideline by the fans. It was nonstop, all 4 quarters. Okay? It's a very hard place to play. And a lot of hiccups. There were a lot of hiccups. You had Isaiah Rodgers, Matt Stafford aired it out, interception, but somehow somebody, Demarcus Robinson, got it out of his hands.
Stole it from him.
Yeah, it's is that how often does that happen, guys? That's either going to be incompletion or it's going to be a pick. It was right in his hands. So it's and then who's Demarcus Robinson? Come on. So it's he's making plays like that. He's stepping up big. You got Pook. I mean, Quinton Mitchell went out the game. He was out in the first quarter. But luckily, we were so deep, putting in Isaiah Rodgers, people forget. That was a starting cornerback before he got suspended for a year. We picked him up for cheap because he was suspended. And he just sat there. And then we happened to draft Quinton. We didn't know that. And Cooper DeJean. And while he was going through his suspension or whatever, he ended up hurting his hand in the preseason, so therefore he was already out before the season even started. We didn't know Quinyon was going to turn into what he turned into, because if he didn't hurt his hand in the preseason, Quinyon is nickel. We don't even see DeJean at all. He might be a safety, and Rodgers would have been the CB2 with Slay at CB1. So it's not like he's just nobody. This is a guy who would start on a lot of teams right now. So. Just a lot happened that game. But we have a Saquon. And what do? What can you do? We should literally ride Saquon's heels all the way to a Super Bowl championship. I get it. We'll probably see the Rams if we win. How do you stop a guy who puts up at will 200 yards rushing a game? How do you? I mean, I want to know. I bet there's a stat out there that when a rusher goes for over, we even see 175. How often that team wins? I bet the probability is very, very high. I guarantee it's very high. Because one, that's clock management, unless it's just walk-off, TD runs, which Saquon does have those. I think he had 2 over 60 last night. But unless it's that, but oh no, he had like 20. He had like 29 carries, I believe. 20. He was up there in carries, 28, 29 carries, somewhere around there. And it's like if you're not stopping Saquon, you're not stopping the run game, and our defense is playing the way our defense is playing. We're constantly under pressuring Matthew Stafford. We're hitting guys. I mean, dude, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson every week he's getting just a big ass hit. This Eagles defense is way too physical. I love this offense, and I get it. I want my guys like AJ Brown and Smitty to eat, but now I don't care. This is Jalen Hurts throw for 100 yards. I even tweeted. I said, "Here's my prediction," and my last bullet point was, "I already know Jalen Hurts is going to piss me off. Protect the ball." If that's how we have to win, I don't give a shit because this defense is fun to watch, very fun to watch. So even though some people don't like to watch dominant teams, this year I do because our defense is very fun to watch. Guys are getting hit. There's a lot of sacks. There's a lot of QB pressures. There's some amazing plays. And these guys are just having fun. So LA, they think they came in. Todd, you would know what their line was. They were underdogs, what, like 5.5, 6-point underdogs?
It closed at 7.
Yeah. So I mean, come on. Like, they had a moment, a little scared, where they almost took Jalen Hurts out, rolled on his knee, and he had to go to the blue tent. Outside of that, I'm like, this game should be like put away very soon. We just got to get in the fucking end zone. And instead, we're kicking field goals when we need to get in the end zone. We're getting good field advantage, and we need to get in the end zone, and we're just not. So that red zone offense is definitely a problem. I'm going to blame the snow a little bit, but we need to score. And by any means necessary, Saquon Barkley, when in doubt, just give him the ball. Just give him the ball. It's very, very simple. We have the best offensive line of football. We have the best running back in probably the last since AP. I would put Saquon even over Henry, and I'll explain why very briefly. When it comes to being a running back, I'm taking a guy like Saquon. If you were to take Saquon's film and Derrick Henry's film, all the best runs in their career, right? Make them to where you could not see like what team they played for, who they were. They're just a gray clay animation. And you watch. I'm 100% taking Saquon Barkley after seeing what he does with the ball versus over Derrick Henry. And it's not just because of this season. He's been this way since Penn State. He was drafted. He was being compared to Barry Sanders. He's been like the only running back I think that's ever been compared to Barry Sanders. And they weren't joking. They were showing some of the stuff Sanders did and some of the stuff that Saquon did. Kind of the same way that they were doing with the Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan when they had like those comparisons like, yo, Kobe definitely studied Michael's game. He's doing the exact moves Michael Jordan did. You look at Saquon Barkley and it's like, you're just a bigger, as fast, if not faster, stronger Barry Sanders. We have that on our team behind the best offensive line of football. The win was expected. And that's another reason why we're not losing to the Commanders next week. We would have to literally shoot ourselves in the foot. The game, I already looked it up, the game that we lost to the Commanders, first off, we only lost by 3. They scored 22 points in the fourth quarter. You guys think that they're going to be able just to keep doing that? I get it. They have Jaden Daniels. He's amazing. Scary Terry. But again, the Lions defense is far inferior to the Eagles defense. And you're in Philadelphia. You're walking into hell. That's all I'm going to say. You're literally walking into hell. And all of our guys are 110% healthy. That's the way I see it, man. So I'm just not expected. Or I did expect to win, and I was dead serious, even up to the end of the game where they almost came back. We got a little nervous, but I'm like, you understand, they only got the ball back because he scored so damn quick. We just scored a big-ass run by Saquon, and then Stafford went down the field immediately and scored. I'm like, damn. Now if we don't convert on this next drive, which is possible, we got to punt, they get the ball, and they get one last shot. So, again, coaching wasn't the best. There's some questionable things that happened at the end of the first half there. Sirianni had a chance to get in field goal range. He decided to let the clock run out. Don't know what's going on there. A lot of hiccups on the Eagles' end, and that's all telling. So, just not surprised, and I was honestly comfortable that entire game. It was up till the very, very end where I was like, even if they score, I'm like, somehow, some way, we're gonna get downfield and just kick a 60-yarder, and Jake Elliott will be the unsung hero again.
Well, I think you summed it up perfectly when you said during your response, we have a Saquon, we being the Eagles, because the Eagles have Saquon, everyone else doesn't, including the New York Giants, who are just so stupid for letting him go. And when you were talking about the comparison between Saquon and Derrick Henry, I feel like this weekend's games was the only sample size I needed to side with Saquon because, simply put, like Derrick Henry, when it comes to just being a bruising running back, he's one of the best, if not the best, that we've seen since all of the talented running backs from the 2000s and the 90s and the 80s. But Derrick Henry's weakness is he doesn't consistently catch the ball out of the backfield. We even saw him have a couple drops in the game that we're going to get to next with the Bills and the Ravens. And Saquon is very reliable in that sense. And in today's game, that's a difference maker right there. And so I would side with you on that as well, Kaz. But Jaevon, obviously for you and I as 49ers fans, this was bittersweet. This was one of those games where it's like, can both teams lose? Like, that'd be great. I was rooting for the Rams, and like my stomach was turning every time I thought about rooting for the Rams. And as I told the backstory last week on the episode, I was rooting for the Rams because of my friend Eric, who passed away, who was a Rams fan. And I was ultimately pulling for them to win it all. That came to an end. And but still, it was hard for me to stomach even thinking about rooting for the Rams as much as I was trying. But as I said, for us as 49ers fans, we didn't want either team to win. So how did you feel about this one overall?
Yeah, this game was I thought the Eagles came out kind of, flexing their muscles a little bit, but the Rams were kind of just fighting back a lot. And I thought they were getting Tyler Higbee heavily involved. Obviously Puka Nacua was making plays. The run game was working with Kyron Williams, early on. I thought that they were running the ball well until he obviously had the fumble at the end. Saquon Barkley's really good at football. I think the NFL, and for the Giants just gifting him and just letting him walk to Philly was just criminal and abysmal at the same time. I mean, he's just like Kaz already mentioned. He's like at will getting 200 yards, and these are playoff games that he's putting these numbers up in. Didn't really see too much of AJ Brown. I think teams are starting to key in on him a little bit. I think Devontae Smith needs to get the ball more, and when he gets the ball in space, I think things can happen. Same thing with AJ Brown, but I just think teams are starting to key in on AJ a little bit more.
AJ got his opportunities. He was dropping balls.
He
shut up. He can shut up.
He was definitely dropping balls.
Yeah,
I like his Honda. I like his Honda though.
His Honda was cool, but he was dropping balls. That's on him.
Jalen Hurts was immobilized, I think, towards the end of the game when he did get hurt, and you could kind of see it the way that he was walking. Kevin will deny this and say it was because of the snow. I think it was because his knee got bent backwards. And even after the game, he said, we'll see how the week goes, and we'll just take it from there. But I do think Jalen Hurts was a little bit uncomfortable towards the end of the game. And the way that Kellen Moore was calling plays for him, you could tell that he wasn't really able to move around in the pocket versus just sitting there and handing it to Saquon. The Rams started to key in on that and just started to load the box up and say, hey, Jalen, why don't you try and move around like you were literally when they started the game out. He had a 40-something yard rushing touchdown. I just think moving forward, they're going to need Jalen Hurts to be what we saw in that first half, him moving around, rushing for touchdowns, things of that nature, mixed in with Saquon, doing what he does best and just breaking off 60-yard touchdown passes. And then when teams want to try and load the box up, that's when you hit AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, those guys over the top. So the Rams definitely had a chance to win this game. Jared Verse, the rookie for the Rams, was a man amongst boys. I don't think Kaz really mentioned Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter is a monster in his own right. I think he definitely had a game-saving sack because Tyler Higbee was wide open in the back of the end zone. but Carter ended up getting the sack on on Stafford, and the fourth down call was very questionable because I thought Puka had a step on who was guarding him, but Stafford kind of like, air mails it and kind of throws it out of bounds. So the Rams definitely had an opportunity to win this game. I just think it was a little bit too little too late for them. But at the same time, I think the Eagles should have won this game. Like Kaz was saying, the game should have been 40-10. I don't know if it should have been that, but they should have won comfortably. And you kind of just see like the Eagles just letting teams hang around a little bit. That can get concerning. You got a young guy in Jaden Daniels coming into town next week, who's no stranger to Philadelphia. This will be their third time playing. It's going to be, you're just going to have to account for him at literally at all times. We saw that when Quinyon Mitchell went when he went out in this game, you immediately saw the Rams start picking on Rodgers. That pass down the sideline to Puka Nacua, guess who that was on? Mr. Rodgers. And it was getting like you were holding your breath a little bit, like, are the Rams they're down 6. So like, are the Rams gonna come back and make something happen? Jake Elliott, it's alarming. As Kaz shows a picture of, I believe that's Jalen Carter. Yeah, he's
Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter tried to bet his bonus check on this game with Verse.
Oh, I didn't see that. That's crazy. That's a good little wrinkle there. I don't know if he took the bet, but
no, he declined.
It literally came down to Jalen Carter making that game-saving sack. I think McVay was trying to expose the matchup that they had on the outside when Quinyon Mitchell went out, and they just started attacking Rodgers literally every chance that they got. So the Rams were another team that was kind of like they were going to trade Puka, they were going to trade Cooper Kupp, they were looking at blowing up the roster, but they kind of just went on a run and ended up winning the division. So hats off to the Rams, good season. The Eagles are going to have their hands full next week with Jaden Daniels coming to town.
It'll be a great game, but the best game from this past weekend was the Bills defeating the Ravens 27-25. And it was very unfortunate for Mark Andrews because he will get all the blame for his 2-point conversion drop late in this game that could have gone into overtime. Instead, now Andrews is going to hear about it all offseason for the drop. And this game seems like it was for the MVP. That's what everyone was adding on top of it going into it between Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. And Josh Allen ultimately prevailed in this one, and the Bills got their revenge against the Ravens, who absolutely dog-walked them week 4 of this season. And so it was a great game, as we expected. But Kaz, what did you think of the game of the weekend between the Bills and the Ravens?
Fortunate, man. Unfortunate. One, even though Saquon is the most valuable player on the planet in the galaxy, I wanted Lamar Jackson to win the MVP. I feel like he's shown me a lot. People don't understand like how hard it is to continuously perform. Okay. And when you think of Lamar Jackson's like just career, okay, he just now got Derrick Henry. Before that, he was rolling around with Gus Edwards and half of J.K. Dobbins' leg. Okay. Also, who has been his primary wide receiver in any of his years? You got a guy in Zay Flowers who is not a true number 1. Don't get me wrong, Zay Flowers is phenomenal.
Pro Bowler.
Very, very good. He's phenomenal. If that is your number 1 option, and also, what is it? This is second year, right? Because last year's rookie year, or is this year 3? I think it was
second year.
Yeah, second year.
Flowers second year.
Yeah. So okay. So you got Zay Flowers for 2 years. Last season, okay, whatever. This season, good season, right? He didn't even play this game. let's just put that out there. So, what are you gonna say, Toddy?
I was just saying, Zay Flowers is a Pro Bowl receiver, so let's respect Zay Flowers.
I respect him. I respect him. But when I think of a number one, like a Nico Collins is number one. Nico Collins can do it by himself. I think Zay Flowers is really good for how they use him, and there's other guys that complement him really well. I don't think that if Bateman's gone and likely and Andrews is gone or something like that, we'll just say hypothetically, realistically, Bateman's out. Just Bateman. Okay. Now I won't say all their teams out because that's crazy. But just Bateman. I don't think that Zay has the same kind of success that a guy like a Nico Collins would, or like a Jamar Chase, or obviously Justin Jefferson, guys like that. Even though Jay Jettis didn't have the crazy season, but he still had a much better season than half the league because he's Justin Jefferson and he did it effortlessly. But no, I like Zay Flowers. I think he's phenomenal. I just when I'm very strict with how I deem someone as a number one wide receiver. I'm very big on that because we know the top number ones in the league. He ain't that. All right. I'm not saying he has to be compared to Justin Jefferson, things like that. No, but like it's not even close. There's just a gap. I would even say an Amari Cooper is more of a number one than a Zay Flowers. It's my opinion. But either way, Lamar Jackson, who has he had? I mean, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews was a shell of himself beginning of the season. He didn't do anything for the first few weeks, and he kind of made a surge back. They found a guy in Likely, which is awesome. I'll give him that. And then Bateman, he had a pretty solid season this year. He definitely turned it up at the very end of the season for sure. Because me and my boy, who's a Ravens fan, we argued every week because I watch football with him every Sunday about how I'm like, Bateman is not a good receiver. He's like, no, Bateman, he gets open more than a lot of receivers. He just don't get the ball because Lamar sucks. I'm like, Lamar doesn't suck. He ain't open. I don't care what Next Gen Stats says. Bateman is not that good. He is serviceable. He has his moments. Give me a guy like a T. Higgins or a Keon Coleman or something like that over Bateman. These are guys I like that I don't think that are number one tier, right? Like the number one receiver. So, but you got Bateman, you got Derrick Henry, and Lamar. It played lights out this season. He played it very, very well. He had multiple games with multiple touchdowns, proving that he is one of the better passers in the league. I don't know what more you need to see from him. I think he went for, I don't know what his yards were at the end of the season, but he had multiple games
and 2 touchdowns. He had a pick. I don't know what his completion.
I mean, I meant for the whole season.
Oh,
he had multiple games where he went well over 250 through the air. So in multiple touchdowns. And then you got Josh Allen, and I get it. He doesn't have much to work with. I wouldn't say. I mean, they went and got Amari Cooper. I wouldn't say that's not a power move. That's a power move. That's a good move. Amari would be really good on a lot of teams right now. So you got him. You got Keon Coleman. They got who's the other guy? Drawn a blank.
Other receiver. Khalil Shakir.
Yeah, Khalil Shakir. They have guys who can make plays on that Bills offense.
Curtis Samuel.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So they're there. It's not like Josh just by himself. I would just say the Ravens team is definitely better rostered than the Bills team. I'll give them that. But it's not like the Bills had the hardest schedule leading up to this game. They had a very cakewalk schedule all season long. One of the easy schedules in the league, actually, if I remember correctly. When it came to this game, I mean, Shaun said it best. This was the battle for the MVP. Josh Allen's going to get it. Should be Saquon, but he's going to get it. If Lamar wins, he probably would have got it. But it was a good playoff game. I mean, they went back and forth. Baltimore was down a little bit at first, and they surged back like good teams do, and it was right there. Right there, take it overtime. That's just a good, hard-fought football team. All truths are told within that last pass. I'm just going to leave it at that. We've seen everything. Lamar had a solid game. Josh Allen had a very subpar game outside of his touchdowns, but, I mean, okay, let's talk about it. I mean, he had, 20 rushing yards for 2 touchdowns. So we already know where those touchdowns came from, right? And Josh Allen can do that. He does it all the time. So he didn't have a good game on the ground besides the 2 touchdowns. He had nothing through the air. 127, 0 touchdowns. Lamar outplayed him everywhere. Because if you want to count touchdowns, he still threw for 2 touchdowns. He just had the 1 pick. So you get to that into the end zone, Mark Andrews catch the ball. You guys go to overtime. We have a different conversation probably. Even if they don't win the coin toss, I think that we have a different conversation. But it is what it is. That's football. Yeah, I mean, I picked the Bills to win. You guys saw it. I mean, I'm hyping up Lamar Jackson. I picked the Bills to win. I'm like, they're at home, and I just feel like Josh is going to steal this MVP from Lamar, and he's going to do just enough. So shout out to the Bills for handling that's got to be a very hard thing to do. Good luck next week. I hope you guys beat the Chiefs. I don't think it will happen. I have the Chiefs making it to the Super Bowl and the Eagles having a rematch against them, but it'd be fucking awesome if Josh Allen and the Bills do the unthinkable, and it just changes everything. So, yeah, just a good game, good football game. Just an unfortunate outcome for the Ravens.
I saw Ariel Helwani, who is an MMA reporter, one of the best out there, and he's a massive Bills fan. He said on X today that this is how it had to be for the Bills. If they want to slay the dragon, slay their demons, they got to go through the Chiefs in Kansas City. And it'll be interesting to see if they are actually able to accomplish that because, as we know, the Chiefs are the boogeyman. And so it'll definitely be interesting. And Jaevon, you were in the same boat as me. You also picked the Ravens to win this game. And Kaz and Kevin nailed it with the Bills. And so just what was your reaction overall to this one?
I just think Lamar kind of was trying to dig himself out of a hole that was unnecessary. He had 2 turnovers, costly turnovers. The fumble was probably the more costly because the interception didn't really lead to anything. The fumble led to points. And at the end of the day, the Ravens turned the ball over 3 times. The Bills turned the ball over 0 times. And I think Lamar definitely had a chance to put his team in position to win at the end, obviously driving down the field to score potentially the go-ahead game tying 2-point conversion. They obviously drive down the field and they score a touchdown, but were unable to convert the 2-point conversion. I just think on the first time that they went for 2 earlier in the game, they should have probably ran the read option. That's probably what I would have done in those short yardage situations because you got Derrick Henry. You're going to have to stack the box. If you stack the box, then Lamar is just going to keep it and run and beat you outside with his legs. So kind of maybe some questionable play calls with those 2-point conversions. But at the end of the day, Lamar Jackson had 2 turnovers himself, and that kind of put them in a tough spot. So and Kevin and I kind of went back and forth in this, and he thinks Jalen Hurts is better than Lamar Jackson, and that's just a whole nother conversation for another day. But he continually kept, pointing out that Lamar had 2 turnovers, and those are things that you can't really refute. But at the same time, Lamar had a chance to win the game, and this is without Zay Flowers, and he's missing guys on the offensive side of the ball. So I think we can't write this picture of Lamar not being able to win the big game, because I still think he has a lot of time left in the NFL as a star quarterback in the NFL. So we're going to just have to patiently just wait. But it's just tough in the AFC. I mean, you got Lamar, you have Josh Allen, there's Patrick Mahomes, and obviously Joe Burrow. The top 4 guys are literally all in the same conference. So it's a revolving door on who Mahomes is going to play pretty much every year. But it's tough when you have those guys all in the same conference fighting for one spot. And that's literally what it came down to. Josh Allen didn't outplay Lamar, but he didn't put his team in harm's way, if that makes sense. So he had obviously the 2 rushing touchdowns, but I think the big part in this game was the turnovers. And the Ravens were able to move the ball on the Bills. I just think the turnovers hindered them to a point where you're giving the other team points. And home team, points in the playoffs come at a premium because everything is going to slow down unless you're the Commanders and the Lions. But in the playoffs, in the cold, things start to slow down, and the games get tighter and tighter. So you can't turn the ball over. I can't really stress that enough. Turnovers in the playoffs are just absolutely brutal.
They are, and credit to Lamar Jackson too, because after this game, he took full blame for it, and he was saying, Mark has been great for us all season. He's been great for us throughout his tenure in
Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Stat that Mark Andrews hasn't fumbled since like 2019. That's insane.
Yeah,
crazy.
And so there's a crazy stat like that, but then all the trolls, I guess I was trying to come up with the appropriate word for that, but all the trolls on X, like I saw a compilation of Mark Andrews dropping 2-point conversion throws. It was like a game against the Packers, it was a game against the Steelers, and then the game against the Bills. And I feel so bad for him because it's like these athletes are at the absolute top of their game constantly. And you do all the correct training, you take all the correct steps throughout the entire year to get you at your peak performance. And you make one mistake on the biggest stage, and this is the divisional round. It's not like it's the conference championship or even the Super Bowl. But to have that spotlight on you and to make a mistake like that, and then you're only remembered for that mistake rather than all the work that it took to get to that point. It's very unfortunate. It's a very cruel business. This is why these guys get paid millions and millions of dollars, is because if you make a mistake, you're going to be eviscerated for it. And it's unfortunate that all the blame is being placed on Mark Andrews. And I just wanted to give major props to Lamar Jackson because he was a leader and stood 10 toes down for his guy. And he said, hey, I had 2 turnovers in the first half. Like, I can't be doing that. I can't be giving the ball away. And Lamar said, like, hey, we were driving the ball down the field. That wasn't the problem. The problem was giving the ball away and not capitalizing on driving the ball down the field. And so the Bills are moving on. Hopefully the Bills can slay the demon that is the Kansas City Chiefs. We're all united on that. Toddy and I may be Commanders fans for the week. That is to be determined. As we get an eye roll from Kaz. I'm sure Kevin's listening right now.
Look, man, listen. Is this all about the NFC Championship game from 2022, bro? For real?
Oh my god.
I have to know. Okay, I have to know before we move on or whatever we're doing. Right? I hate the Cowboys. Okay, that's no secret. I mean, I hate them. All right. Giants, don't really care for them. Washington, probably gonna learn to hate them too a lot more. But I mean, when we've been kicking these teams' asses my entire life. I mean, what's the hate for? Why the hell would you not cheer for the Eagles over the Commanders? What is it? What if we never saw you guys in that NFC Championship game? Would this be would you have a different thought on this game? Would you cheer for Jalen Hurts? Would you cheer for Saquon Barkley? These are guys that people like. These are guys who they're not problematic. They're not, assholes or not. They don't even talk. They just exist and play the game of football really well. You know what I mean? What is it? Both of you guys, huh?
Well, I will say for me personally, number one, I have Jalen Hurts and Devontae Smith on my dynasty team. So I'm in it for the long haul with a couple of Eagles. But as far as why I may or may not be rooting for the Commanders this weekend, number one, as a Sacramento Kings fan, I can relate to the Commanders a lot easier than I can with the Eagles because the Commanders, their fans have gone through it. The Kings had these owners named the Maloofs who were just god-awful. They weren't to the level of Dan Snyder, but they were god-awful. And the Kings, they were terrible for a long time. So has the Commanders. I know that the Commanders have made more playoff appearances than the Kings had in a 17-year drought. But overall point being, I feel like I can relate to the Commanders more. And the final point is, for me, it does go back to the 2022 NFC Championship. And I promise you, it less and less every single week, every single year, it has less to do with the game itself. But Kaz, before we met you virtually and had you on the podcast a lot, after that NFC Championship game, we were just hearing from Kevin about it for weeks and months. And for me
like
personally,
a whole entire year, basically.
Yeah, it was a whole year. And some of the shit he said was just so outlandish. And so, like, yeah, it stuck with me. So when the 49ers when the 49ers made it to the Super Bowl the following year, I was on my high horse. And, if the 49ers actually won that Super Bowl, who knows? Who knows what Kevin's reaction would have been, what your reaction would have been. Who knows? But they didn't finish the job. I think, if anything, I more so am just rooting for the Commanders because I think it's more of a story. I like the underdog.
Cinderella's
But, I mean, there's definitely some a little bit still there from the 2022 NFC Championship game.
All right, okay, all right.
Or 2023, but same difference. 2022 season.
Yeah.
And yep. So that's it for me. Toddy, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I just think the game itself is going to be a lot closer than most people think. I just think Jaden he's just a different player than when he was that couple of weeks ago. Don't get me wrong. That game, Jaden cost me money that game. The last time you guys played him, Kenny Pickett was quarterback. Costing me money. So, I mean, I was upset that day. But, I mean, I've seen him just do crazy stuff these past couple of weeks. And it's just like, I can't really explain it. It's just when the ball is in his hands, in a late game situation, he's just going to continue to make plays game in and game out.
You guys ready for my score prediction?
Yep, let's hear it. 40-10.
Close. We're going to go 30-17. Philadelphia wins.
Okay, well, that's not. I mean, 13 points is a big difference.
I would like to see what Jalen Hurts, because I want to know how healthy is he going to be. What is he going to look like? I don't think the weather won't be as bad this game, but I want to see how mobile is he going to be, and you'll be able to tell that early on. And can they contain Jaden Daniels? Jaden Daniels is not going to. The last time you guys played them, I think you guys turned the ball over. You turned them over five
times. Yeah.
Five times. I don't know if the Commanders can't turn the ball over 5 times and expect to win this game, especially on the road.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, yep. 30-17. I think it's going to be just and bookmark it. I'll say it loud and proud. 30-17. I think just that our defense is too angry, man. They're just too angry. Like these guys are not playing around. Like they're just not. Like if we make it to the Super Bowl and they show up, like Mahomes is going to need the refs on the side because those guys are going to be there. And I don't know. I hate to admit it, but I do like Jaden Daniels. Again, I'm not a division opponent. Definitely going to be a division rival. I can respect a good quarterback. I can respect a good guy and a good quarterback, and he's both. He's a cool dude. Good quarterback. He's the polar opposite of what Dak Prescott is for me. Dak at times can be a good quarterback, but he's such a little arrogant little asshat. I don't like him, and I hate his fat ass head. But regardless, Jaden Daniels, cool dude, but all that shit ends next week. I'm not trying to sound cocky, but at the same time, I'm being dead honest. I cannot foresee this defense allowing Daniels just to go off for 250 and 4 touchdowns. I get it. The last game, when we played him was different. He had, was it 5 touchdowns? I think it was. But either way, like I said, we had no offense. We were just giving him the ball. And he had a lot of turnovers. He had a lot of opportunities. Just give him the ball, give him the ball, give him the ball, give him the ball. It's like, okay, well, at some point, he's going to score some damn points. I mean, shit, even Ryan Fitzpatrick or Jameis Winston would score points when you give them that many opportunities. But no, I think that we just do a really good job of shutting down these receivers more than Daniels. I think Daniels will do his own thing, but these guys are just not going to be open. I don't think they're going to be open. So we'll see. Well,
Kaz, we appreciate you for joining us. Thank you so much. That wraps up our NFL coverage for this week. Toddy, I know that you got to get going soon too as well. Kaz, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you.
Hey, man, appreciate you guys. I'll talk to you guys next time.
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
Your brother Kaz.
So, Toddy, I just wanted to get a couple of my thoughts about the college football championship off of my chest. Do you got to get running, or do you got a couple more minutes?
Go ahead.
I can close it out. I can close it out on my own if you need me to. If Mr. Mako's calling for you.
Go ahead. What we got?
All right. Well, I know that you covered it in depth at the beginning, but I was saving the segment for the end, hoping that Kevin could join us for the Ohio State celebration. Unfortunately, he got stuck in some traffic coming back from the airport, and so he won't be able to join us on today's episode. But I just wanted to just talk about today's national championship because coming into the game, as I talked about at the top, Ohio State had all the expectations on it. Everyone thought that the Buckeyes were just going to absolutely destroy them. And I said coming into this game, I said it's going to be competitive in the first half. Buckeyes win by double digits. That ultimately happened. But, if not for that Jeter missed field goal, it would have been a single-digit game. And so I was impressed by Notre Dame's opening drive. Riley Leonard was a man on the mission. But instantly, as great as it looked for them, I just thought to myself, he is gassing himself out right now. Holly Rowe even said with reporting during the game, "Oh yeah, he just threw up after that first drive. Like, okay, he got
they ran him like 10 times."
exactly, and so he was just a straight up man on a mission. And but they basically expended all their energy, at least in the first half, right then and there. Then the Buckeyes come back. They score 3 straight times, go into halftime, 21-7, as you mentioned earlier. And I was texting with my cousin who lives in San Diego, who's also a Buckeyes fan because of our grandpa. And I said to him, I was like, all right, now's the time to put the nail in the coffin. It's time for the kill shot. And they came out, scored a touchdown to open the second half, and he said, there it is. And for Notre Dame to come all the way back, I think the lead was stretched out to 31-7. For Notre Dame to come all the way back and they scared me. They scared me. I was sitting here watching this game, and I was just like, are they really not going to win this championship of all of them? They're not going to win this one after everything that has happened this season. And then that play, the play to Jeremiah Smith, just straight up go ball. And, Howard, he gave his best player a shot. He converted. And at that point, I was like, all right, I feel better. And it was really when Jeter, Notre Dame's kicker, missed that field goal that I was like, all right.
Blake.
Like chip shot, 27 yards, something like that. And for him to
the entire year, though.
Yeah. But like for him to hit a 40-something yard field goal to send them to the Natty, and then to miss that of all kicks when they have all the momentum, I felt better about the Buckeyes winning the championship after he missed that. And then obviously Smith sealed the game. But man, it's like when you have all the expectations and after everything from this season coming into the college football playoff, I was just saying, if Ryan Day does not lead this team to a win against Tennessee, he's gone. Tough. But even if they lost to Oregon after beating Tennessee, I was like, all right, that's cool. He did enough to save his job because Oregon was number 1. They were undefeated. And so I really, man, I'm just so overjoyed that I don't even know how to feel. Like, I thought I was going to cry. I didn't cry. I'm surprised. And shout out to brother Jesse, who says, good game, but Ohio was just too much. And that was ultimately the downfall of Notre Dame, was how great Ohio was and how stacked they were because of NIL money. And also shout out to Uncle Manny from his comment at the beginning of the show. Says, wow, episode 132, have a great show. We appreciate you. But I'm just so thrilled about the Buckeyes winning. I got to get a new hat to match this one from 2014. It was ironic too, because my brother gave me a Fanatics gift card for Christmas. And I was gonna save it, and I was gonna save it and be like, all right, I'm gonna buy my Buckeyes championship gear with this. But I didn't want to hedge my bet, and I didn't want to jinx it, and so I ended up buying a Kings hat with it. And so now I got to pay out of pocket to buy some Ohio State championship swag. But yeah, man, I'm so happy. I know that Kevin is too, and that's gonna do it for episode number 132 of Stats Over Politics. Unless you have anything else you would like to add, I'm going to get to the outro. And so here we go. Make sure to give us a like on YouTube. Helps us a lot. And if you enjoy the podcast, hit subscribe to get notifications when we go live. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Stats Over Politics, and on X at Stats or Politics. Make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on all podcast platforms. And if you're enjoying the show, give us those 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it. As you guys have been tuned in to episode number 132 of Stats Over Politics, for my guys, Jaevon Toddy, Kaz Johnson, and Kevin Dent, I've been your host, Shaun Holko. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you next Monday on another episode of Stats Over Politics. Peace.